And now, the truth will be revealed. A story hidden in the shadows, where love fought against despair, where courage challenged silence, and where reality itself became a battlefield. This is not just a tale of survival. It is a mirror of humanity. A story that changed lives once, and has the power to change yours today. Imagine a city proud of its lights, its sounds, its life. Streets glowing with gatherings, markets echoing with voices, and faces painted with peace. Everyone believed this city would never fall silent, would never stop breathing. But life always tests us at the very moment we feel most secure. That night, a strange shadow covered the sky. First came the fierce winds, then thunder tore the heavens apart, and finally a storm so brutal it pierced straight through the heart of the city. Within hours, streets turned into rivers, buildings crumbled, and families screamed as they were trapped inside their homes. The city that once glowed under the sun was drowned in darkness. Power vanished. Water stopped. Phone lines went dead. Everywhere there was fear and silence. People called out to one another, but their voices were swallowed by the storm's roar. The cries of children, the prayers of mothers, the sobs of the elderly, all mixed into a single chorus of despair as the city sank deeper into chaos. The promises of leaders existed only on paper. Help was nowhere in sight. The powerful saved themselves, while the poor lifted their eyes to the heavens, hoping for even a drop of mercy to fall. But the shocking truth was this. Then came silence, a silence heavier than screams, a silence that declared the city was taking its last breath. And in that silence, a story was about to be born. A story that would not only save a city, but forever change humanity itself. The storm had passed, but what it left behind was worse than the storm itself. The city looked like a battlefield. Streets that once carried laughter were now drowned in mud and broken glass. Homes had collapsed into ruins. Families wandered barefoot through the debris, searching for faces they feared they would never see again. Children cried with empty stomachs, their tiny hands holding shattered toys they pulled from the wreckage. Mothers tried to calm them, but their own eyes were swollen from tears. The elderly sat silently, staring at the broken walls of the homes they had built with their life's savings. Hunger clawed at their bodies, thirst cracked their lips, and yet, no help arrived. The government's promises had vanished into thin air. No rescue teams, no food trucks, no lights to cut through the darkness. Days passed, but the silence of those in power was louder than the cries of the suffering. People began to feel abandoned, as if the entire city had been erased from the map. Survival turned into a fight. Neighbors who once shared meals now fought over a single loaf of bread. Men argued for drops of water. Some hoarded whatever little they could find, while others gave away the last piece of food in their hands. Humanity was breaking apart. Yet, in the shadows, sparks of compassion still flickered. But for most, hope had collapsed. At night, the city lay silent under the pale moonlight, like a graveyard of dreams. It seemed certain the city would not rise again. And yet, destiny was already writing a twist, because in this very darkness, when all hope had died, a few forgotten hands were preparing to rise. Hands that carried no fame, no power, no wealth. Only courage, love, and the will to fight for others. Days after the destruction, when the city was exhausted from screaming, when hope had completely died, a faint light began to shine in the darkness. Ordinary people, not leaders, not the powerful, not the wealthy, just men and women with nothing but courage in their hearts stepped forward. A small bakery owner broke open his own shop and began handing out bread to the hungry. A driver turned his car into an ambulance and rushed the injured to safety. A young man with his mother by his side waded through the floodwaters and carried 2 children out in his arms. These were hands never written into government records, faces never seen on award stages, yet they were the very hands that kept the city from dying. Many of them had lost their own homes. Their own children were hungry. But when humanity cries before your eyes, your own needs feel small. An old man whispered, "My house has fallen, but as long as I breathe, no one else will sleep under the open sky." From every corner, small acts of kindness began to grow. Someone gave away their last bag of rice. Someone handed out clothes to those shivering in the cold. Someone lit a torch in the night to guide strangers through broken streets. This was humanity at its purest, shining in the darkest hour. Slowly the people realized the city was not alone, because some forgotten hands, nameless, faceless, without fame or recognition, had risen for them. And this was only the beginning. The true battle was yet to come. The city was still broken, but now it was no longer silent. The forgotten hands had lit a fire of courage, of resistance, of survival. Day after day, these unsung heroes risked everything. They waded through toxic waters to pull out the trapped. They carried the wounded on their backs across collapsed bridges. Their own feet bled, their bodies burned with fever, but still they refused to stop. And yet, survival was never easy. At every corner, there was a new fight. Some fought the hunger gnawing inside their stomachs. Some fought the diseases that spread through dirty water. Others fought the despair that whispered, "Give up. It's over." But love is the strongest weapon. A mother who had lost her own child still took in 3 orphans, feeding them with whatever scraps she could find. A young man gave away his only blanket to a stranger shivering in the cold. A group of women stayed awake through endless nights, cooking food in broken pots to feed entire neighborhoods. The fight was brutal. The storm had tested the city's strength, but now fate was testing its soul. Every sacrifice, every tear, every drop of sweat became part of this battle. And the forgotten hands, nameless, faceless, ordinary, carried that burden like warriors. Some of them never made it out alive. A rescuer drowned while pulling strangers from the flood. Another collapsed from exhaustion after carrying food across miles. Their names would never be carved on monuments, but their actions carved hope into the hearts of thousands. And so, the city began to breathe again, not because of power, not because of governments, but because a few hands had chosen to fight when everyone else gave up. This was survival. This was humanity. This was the fight that would echo for generations. The storm had taken everything, yet it had also given the city something no power on earth could erase: the memory of sacrifice. Slowly, buildings were rebuilt. Streets were cleaned. The laughter of children returned to corners once filled with screams. Life, as it always does, found its way back. From the outside, it looked as if the city had healed. But deep inside, there remained scars invisible to the eye. Scars carried not in stone and cement, but in hearts. The forgotten hands that had saved thousands disappeared back into the crowd. No news channel spoke their names. No history book wrote their stories. They melted into silence, as if they had never existed. But the lives they touched, the hearts they changed, carried their memory like an eternal flame. An old woman whispered to her grandchildren, "Never forget. When the city was dying, strangers gave me bread and water. That's why you are alive today." A boy once rescued from the floods grew up to become a doctor, dedicating his life to serving the poor. A mother, who had been saved by nameless strangers, taught her children that true wealth is not gold or silver, but the courage to give when you have nothing. And so, the legacy lived on, not in statues, not in headlines, but in the quiet choices of ordinary people who were inspired to carry the same torch forward. Because sometimes, the greatest heroes are never celebrated. Sometimes the ones who change the world walk among us, unnoticed, unremembered, yet unforgettable. The city survived not because of power, not because of governments, but because of hands no one remembers yet everyone owes their life to. These were the forgotten hands that saved a city.